Right now, as you're watching this, there's a number sitting behind almost every single platform you use, and it's a number most companies really don't want you thinking about too hard. On most online platforms, roughly 90% of users never post anything at all. Not a comment, not a like, not a single word. They just watch, silently, forever. And today we're talking about them because honestly, statistically speaking, that might even be you. There's actually a name for this. It's called the 99-1 rule, first described by a researcher named Jacob Nielsen back in 2006. The idea is simple. In most online communities, about 90% of people lurk and never contribute anything. 9% contribute occasionally, maybe a comment here, a like there, and just 1% create almost all the visible content you actually see. 1%. That's it. So if you've ever felt like the internet is dominated by a small, loud group of people, you're not imagining that. You're watching the 1% perform, while the 90% quietly watches back. So why do so many people choose to stay completely silent? Let's start with the most obvious answer, and it's one almost everyone can relate to on some level. Fear of judgment. Posting something online isn't like saying it out loud to a friend, where the moment passes and it's gone. Online, what you say gets frozen in time. It can be screenshotted, quoted, misread, and thrown back at you years later, completely out of context. Psychologists call this the permanence problem, and it creates a very specific kind of anxiety that didn't really exist before the internet. Your brain isn't built to comfortably handle an audience that's simultaneously invisible, permanent, and potentially massive. And that leads us to something researcher Dana Boyd calls context collapse. In real life, you behave differently around your boss than you do around your best friend, and differently again around your grandmother. That's not fake. That's just normal social flexibility, something humans have done forever. But online, all of those audiences get mashed into one single feed. Your coworker, your ex, your mom, and a total stranger from another country can all see the exact same post. And when your brain realizes there's no single correct version of yourself to present to that mixed crowd, the safest option often feels like posting absolutely nothing at all. Here's another big one: perfectionism paralysis. A lot of lurkers aren't quiet because they have nothing to say. They're quiet because they've drafted the comment, typed it out, reread it 4 times, imagined every possible way it could be misunderstood, and then quietly deleted it before hitting send. Researchers who study online communities call this evaluation apprehension, this constant, looping fear that whatever you post will be judged, picked apart, or simply not good enough compared to the polished content already surrounding it. When your only frame of reference is other people's highlight reels, your own unfiltered thought can feel embarrassing by comparison, even when it really isn't. Personality plays a role here too, and this is where it gets interesting. Studies on internet behavior consistently find a correlation between introversion and lurking, but not in the way people usually assume. It's not simply that introverts are shy or socially incapable. Many introverts process the world internally before they externalize it. They'd genuinely rather read 50 opinions and quietly form their own conclusion than be the 51st voice adding to the noise. For a lot of lurkers, silence isn't a deficiency. It's a preference. They're not failing to participate. They're choosing to observe and, honestly, getting real value out of doing exactly that. There's an evolutionary angle to this too, and it's a genuinely useful way to think about it. For most of human history, saying something wrong in front of your tribe wasn't just embarrassing, it could get you socially exiled from the only group keeping you alive. Our brains evolved in small groups of maybe 50 to 150 people, where reputation was everything and mistakes traveled slowly enough to be forgotten. The internet completely broke that math. Now your tribe can be millions of strangers. Your mistake travels at the speed of light, and it never actually gets forgotten. It just gets buried until someone digs it back up. Your nervous system, frankly, was never built for stakes this high, so staying quiet can feel, on some deep animal level, like the safest possible move. There's also a generational and cultural layer worth mentioning. Younger users who grew up watching older siblings or even parents get embarrassed, doxxed, or professionally hurt by something they posted years earlier have absorbed a very different relationship with the internet. For them, the default setting isn't share first, think later. It's assume everything is permanent and post accordingly, which very often means posting nothing at all. In a strange twist, growing up more online than any generation before them has actually made a lot of young people more cautious about what they put online, not less. Now, here's where this gets genuinely fascinating from a psychological standpoint. Lurking isn't necessarily a symptom of loneliness or disconnection, even though it might look that way from the outside. Research on online communities has found that lurkers often report the same sense of belonging and community connection as active posters do. You can feel deeply part of a fandom, a forum, or a comment section's culture without ever typing a single word into it. Psychologists sometimes call this vicarious participation. You're not contributing content, but you're absolutely consuming, processing, and emotionally engaging with the group. From the inside, it can feel just as real as posting would. So does that mean lurking is always healthy? Not exactly, and this is the part worth being honest about. There's a difference between someone who lurks because they genuinely prefer observing, and someone who wants to post, who has something to say, but stays silent purely out of fear. That second version can absolutely tip into isolation, especially if the same avoidance pattern shows up offline too, in real conversations, real relationships, real rooms full of real people. The silence itself isn't the problem. What matters is whether it's a choice or a cage. It's also worth pointing out who tends to be loudest, because it flips the whole picture on its head. Researchers studying comment sections and online forums have repeatedly found that the most frequent posters often score higher on traits linked to narcissism and lower on traits linked to agreeableness, compared to the general population of users on the same platform. That doesn't mean every active poster is difficult or self-absorbed. Plenty of genuinely thoughtful people post constantly too. But it does mean the loudest voices you're seeing aren't a random, representative sample of humanity. They're a specific, self-selected slice of people who are simply more comfortable or more compelled to put themselves out there again and again. The quiet 90% isn't the exception to normal online behavior. It actually is normal online behavior. The 1% is the outlier we've just all mistaken for the default. There's one more angle worth touching on, which is the sheer asymmetry of what we're all actually comparing ourselves to. Every single day, you are quietly comparing your unfiltered, messy, uncertain inner thoughts against the filtered, edited, best possible version content made by that 1% who post constantly. That's not a fair fight, and it was never designed to be one. The people posting the most aren't necessarily the most confident, the most correct, or the most interesting. They're simply the most willing to be seen, which is a completely different skill than being right. So the next time you catch yourself reading a comment section, scrolling past a debate, watching an argument unfold in real time without ever typing a single word into it, don't assume that means you're missing out or falling behind or somehow doing the internet wrong. You're actually doing something the loudest 1% almost never gets to do. You're watching the whole show, clearly, without needing to be part of the performance. And in a world absolutely obsessed with being seen, choosing to simply watch, quietly, on your own terms, might honestly be one of the sanest things you can do.